My journey is interesting because in terms of journalism and communication, I've done everything. I started off in mainstream journalism, mostly in broadcasting. I've written, I've been in an NGO, a media NGO. I've worked in an agency, and I agree with Charm. Yes, you do cry. I even remember this particular day I was called and I'd lost my kid brother, and they couldn't let me go. And when I walked out, I never returned to an agency. I've been in academia, I've been in government, I've been in projects. But like everybody is saying, every time you're in those places, put your best foot forward. Be flexible. I can work very long hours, maybe that's a plus. But the aspect of leadership, I think some things are innate. Most of my leadership positions, like already said, I've been pushed to leadership. Like I'm never willing. I've had opportunities, a new university, we want you to be vice chancellor. I'm like, no way, I hate leadership positions. The way I went to my career, they wanted me to be head of department. I'm like, no, I hate administration. But I've always been in those situations where I'm thrown to the deep end to lead. Like, okay, I'll do a bit of this for a very small time, and then we'll see. So my leadership roles, I've mostly been invited, apart from the position I hold at the moment. So one of my first board positions was actually at the Uganda Media Women's Association. At a very young age, a seasoned female journalist, and there is a lady called Margaret Sentamo. She's still the CEO. But she always saw something in me that I didn't. So every time there was to lead teams on this project, even setting up the radio station, she asked me to lead that team. And of course I was scared, being a young girl, and leading all these seasoned broadcasters, but I took up the role. She always pushed me, and she always cautioned me about my dressing. I was a typical jeans and t-shirt person. Proper journalist, as they described us at the moment, but she would always say, the trouble with this is the way you dress, but otherwise you have this, you have this. So she would even call me, are you in a dress? I need to see what you're wearing. So of course along the way, I also learned that how you show up matters. Yet to me at that time it didn't matter. So I became a board member at Uganda Media Women's Association, and eventually became a board chair. And I was the last board chair for the last 10 years. And I think that nurtured that aspect of my leadership. So in other roles where I've led, maybe I've headed a communications team, but in terms of being a board member, that gave me an opportunity to nurture my strategic planning skills and things like that. And so when opportunities came, like developing a strategic plan. And she had also identified that I'm a good writer in strategy documents. So I was always given, write the strategic plan, write the communication strategy. I don't know the balance scorecard, Patricia, you're in charge. So I was able to learn certain things about strategic thinking, strategic planning. Of course, financial acumen is very important. Something I always run away from figures, but if you're going to be in leadership in the board, you can't run away from statistics, you can't run away from figures. So maybe retrospectively, one of the things I have learned is that maybe if I'd been guided better, there were always those courses of accounting for non-accounting people, I should have done it, which I learned later. And like the earlier speaker said, in Uganda you get invited to the board. So there I was at some point, and I was reached out to by the New Vision Group, and they said, well, we have an opening at the Vision Group, we need a board member, and we need someone with a communication background, and we think you're the best fit. Like, okay, would you like to do? Of course, Vision, I would like to do it. But it doesn't come that easy, it's competitive. So many people are lobbying, so many people want the position. I'm not good with lobbying for jobs. And that spoils you a bit sometimes when you've sort of had it easy. So I'm like, no, I have to start lobbying for a job. I really don't like those things. They said, no, you just send your CV and we see. So yes, I sent my CV, and of course along the way there are things they tell you. I was lucky to have done a business communication for my master's, which again I stumbled upon as a journalist. I was covering an education fair, and there was this UK university that had a course called business communication. I'd never had something like that, but it caught my attention. But I think that pulled me away from mainstream journalism to the other areas of communication, which of course I'd learned but I hadn't practiced. So there are things I learned while I did that business communication that taught me how to go about certain things. So coming back, and sometimes when they say when one door opens, or when one door closes, maybe the window opens. So when I returned, I was in Radio Uganda. My boss told me, well, now you're more qualified than me. By then, a master's was a big deal. As a young person, I didn't think much about it. I think you need to go home for 2 weeks, as we decide. I never went back. But I'd learned something about marketing in the UK. And I'd also got a job in the American Chamber of Commerce in the UK, but I was so homesick. I just came home. And when I shared with my dad, he wanted to kill me. So there I was. Radio Uganda won't have me because I have a master's. I'm overqualified for just being a reporter and a newsreader in the newsroom. And my parents want to kill me for being such an idiot. Like, how do you walk away from a job in the UK and come home to sit? So I literally got, you know those Yellow Pages books? I literally got one of those books and I just started calling companies one by one by one. I'm LITHO Patricia, I just did a master. Basically, you know, I sold myself. And one company is called Stateman. Yes, Stateman, yeah, I think it's called Centum Robert. Yes, so he was so impressed by that. He's like, wow, I've never come across somebody like this. We're actually looking for a head of communication and advertising. You come and we meet, and so basically it tells me how we're going to meet. And again, mothers, when I shared, she was like, these days they kidnap girls. You mean the guy just said meet him at a petrol station and he picks you because you won't be able to find his office? No. I think I'll have someone follow you. So anyway, I can be a bit stubborn, but there I was. I went and engaged with this guy, and I was given the job. And I remember one of my first clients was Post Bank, and they were just rebranding, and I think I did an excellent job. Of course, those stories go back and forth and things, but I think I was not very happy being there. And then Uganda National Council of Science and Technology, I think drove me to my mainstream corporate communication where I am now. So they advertised for a job, and I'd never had a comms person, and they needed someone to start. Of course, I had no experience in corporate communication PR, but I had a lot of skills that were required. So I went and started on this job. One of the first things they told me, well, this is the government of Uganda, we don't take trousers. I know you're shocked to see me in a dress today, but I use it. Yeah, so you find that dressing is always fronting itself, especially for women. And if you want to go in leadership, you must have those awarenesses. I'm appearing for this. You need to think through, and through those media women organizations, I remember they even used to train us in power dressing and things like that, things you think are not important. So those kind of experiences sort of add up. And while I was there doing my comms job, there was a project called the Akasha Project. It was an ICT project setting up telecenters in Uganda. And my boss just said, Patricia, I think you're the best fit for this. You said in your master's you did a bit of IT. This is an IT job. You have the following skill. You're going to head this. And while I was heading that project, I automatically became the board secretary as the project director. So I interfaced with a lot of board members at that level, got a lot of exposure. And also, just to sort of echo what my colleagues have said, that there are things people tell you or direct you. So you know how things can work in Uganda, so there I am holding this position, and an opportunity comes to go to Sun City. My goodness, at that time, I think it's still an hour at the moment to go to Sun City. And then my boss, for some reason, opted to send his daughter. He told me his daughter was better placed because she has experience in these things. But I held this position. Now, this project was funded by the Ford Foundation, which we had a regional director in Nairobi, a Nigerian lady. So she came to check on us on one of those days that we were doing, and I complained. I'm one of those people, I will rarely shut up. If I'm unhappy about something, I'll speak out. Because sometimes it's, it works against me, sometimes it works for me. And so I complained, and she told me, you know, my dear girl, in life, it's not what you deserve, it's what you negotiate. And I've kept that with me for all my life. And as you all know, a PR job, it's what you negotiate. Most of the positions I've had to hold thereafter, You find without shame, $1 billion project is giving communication 10 million shillings. And they expect a world-class brand to come out of 10 million. So one of the things I learned is growing your budget. It is a real battle, and like PK said today, I have come to start a war. PR can be a war, because you have to negotiate. And then those perceptions that you're a photographer. I've had to remind people that I am LITHO Patricia, Dr. Patricia LITHO. How can you just call me at the end of the meeting to take photos? I will not do that. Yes? Yes, at this level, I am being called to take photos, and I put my foot down and I'm like, this is the last time I am coming to take your photo. If you want me to be part of this process and communicate this, I must be in this meeting. I must be part of this process. So you see, it is not just enough to hold a position I hold. They will even forget you in a meeting you should be, because you're the comms person. You might have the tag manager, director, commissioner. And then I've always sort of mostly worked in science organizations. I work with National Council for Science and Technology. I work with rural electrification. I'm now with Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Scientists. The perception about communicators. So fighting my space and drumming it into the scientists that, hey, I make a difference. I am technical in my area. I can make a difference. So the one person who allows to work with me, I make you shine like the brightest star, and you see the rest begin to come to me. So when you do get the opportunity, show up, perform to the best of your ability, and the rest will fall in line. But one thing I've learned for sure is that you have to be willing to unlearn and learn afresh. A good example is social media that PK kept referring to, new technology. When I went to school, that wasn't really the place to go. You generated things, and you took pride in creating afresh. And people like me sometimes struggle with all these available AI tools like ChatGPT and all, because I want it to come from me. So you know you struggle with having a machine do that for you, but you know, when I wanted now to start engaging on social media and what, I actually reached out to some young people I'd seen actually on Proud Platform. And the first reaction like, Dr. If you want me to teach you how to do Twitter? And I'm like, yes, I do. So learning that a younger person might be better than you at something, or a colleague might be better at you at something, it will enhance you. It will get you to a different place. So always be willing to learn. But also the contexts I've worked in have always been science-based contexts. You must read, you must learn the jargon to be able to speak. For instance, if I came here and spoke like the engineer, what would be my use at the Ministry of Energy? So I have to speak the language that the everyday person will understand. So much as that is told to us, sometimes we don't. You find people writing about finances and Wall Street, and they don't sound any different from the Wall Street guys. You're not communicating. So communicate, understand what you're about, read about the people you represent. I think that does make a difference. The issue about planning, budgeting can't be said without much emphasis, because if you want to be in leadership, you plan for the others, you budget for the others, but you must appreciate teamwork, you must be consultative, but also knowing your value, knowing your place. Of course, I alluded to some of that. Knowing how to time, learning your boss. It's one of your jobs to learn your boss and how to get what you want out of them. Like I said, the PR budget is always a lousy budget, but you're expected to get a lot from it. So while at that, while you're being given 100,000 in a quarter, what can you actually do? So there are skills we have and we sit on and analyze, and I get disappointed when a PR trained person or a communication trained person is getting a consultant to write them a press statement, to put for them an annual report. The good news is that I get money. I also love money. So like you said, money is a motivator. I want to drive this kind of car, so that pushes me. But also when you hold those positions, know what you're about. How are you going to manage the media if you don't even know the editorial process? You are talking about your client stressing you. Do they even know the editorial process? I get that a lot in my work, and I'm like, did you make news?
Did you come to me? So why do you come to me to cry that you paid the journalist 300,000 and your story didn't appear, or you're not on the front page? Well, this is how it works. I break it down for you and I tell you, see, this is why I'm here. Now you know that you don't know my job, you need to come to me, you know. Yes, I will always remind them. So yes, for me, in the interest of time, I'm sure we can always engage in other ways. Relearning, be willing to learn, be willing to consult, know your organization, read, and read, because then you can speak out confidently. When there's a crisis, your bosses take cover. And you've never been to the boardroom, you don't know your strategy, you don't know your budget for that year, you don't know the priorities of government this year. I don't know how many of us work with government who have interface with NDP4. That's what we're all working towards now. And if you fired me a question, I'll be like, oh, you mean we already have another NDP? You know, so there are those things that matter to your professional area or the context in which you work. The basics about communication stand, but the context change and should be able to evolve around that. Thank you.